Hej och välkomna till Investor Targets pressträff med Atacama Copper. Ett kanadensiskt börsnoterat gruvbolag som prospekterar och expanderar sina inmutningar i Mexiko och i Chile. Eftersom dagens bolag är engelskspråkigt kommer presentationen nu att fortsätta på engelska. Hello, welcome, and if you tune in to pressträff from overseas, a very good morning to you all. As always with our broadcast, if you watch this live, you can interact with the management, this by adding your questions in the live chat. We will address your questions at the end of the presentation. Pressträff Direkt is a cooperation between Direkt Studios, Investor Target, Stockpicker and the presenting company, and this time brought to you by Scandinavian Alliance. Scandinavian Alliance is a full-service company and as such can connect any company to the Scandinavian and Northern European markets when it comes to financing. So, with all disclaimers under the belt, it's high time to welcome Tim Warman and Atacama Copper. Tim, how are things?
Things are very good. Thank you for having me today.
Excellent. Well, really looking forward. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thanks everyone for your time. I'll go through the slide deck and then we'll have some time for questions afterwards. So Atacama Copper is a relatively new company. It was formed just in February of this year by the merger of a public company that I was running called Atacama Copper with projects in Chile and a private company that had been put together with projects, precious metals projects in Mexico and backed by very well-known mining investor Pierre Lassonde and also with backing from one of the major gold producing companies, Agnico Eagle. And now we've put the two companies together. We still call the company Atacama Copper, even though we have a very interesting copper project in Chile and another in Mexico, but we also have a precious metals project called Christina in Mexico. And just as a quick summary of the company, what makes us stand out from other companies in the market today? A couple of things. First of all, our management team, we have a proven track record of really making money for our investors. I've been involved with several companies in my career that have been very successful. I've been quite fortunate in that way, as has the rest of our management team. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. Outstanding shareholders. In this market, you really need some credible backing for companies in the junior mining space to succeed. And we certainly have that in abundance. We have Pierre Lassonde, again, very well-known mining billionaire and the founder of Franco-Nevada. We have, and his firm, Trinity Capital Partners. Ross Beatty, another very well-known mining entrepreneur and billionaire. His Lumina Group is very involved with the company, and in fact, our CFO is part of his Lumina Group. As I said, we have a major gold producer, Agnico Eagle, as a shareholder, and Metallist Capital. So with that kind of shareholding, it really gives us both the credibility and the financial backing to grow the company, which is what we intend to do. We're well funded. We recently raised about 13 million Canadian dollars, and we are drilling our property in Mexico and working on our copper project in Chile as we speak. And as I said, we have a mandate from our backers and our shareholders to grow the company both through exploration and through acquisitions. And as I said, our projects, the two projects we're currently focused on are Christina Precious Metals Project in Mexico, where we have a large drilling program currently underway, and our Presentationen Copper Porphyry Project in Chile, which I'll talk about in a bit, where we're just starting to do some work on ground geophysics there. So a bit about the leadership team. I'm Tim Warman. I'm the CEO and director of the company. Previously, I was the CEO of Fiore Gold. For those of you who aren't familiar, Fiore Gold was formed in 2017 when we purchased a bankrupt gold mine in Nevada. We bought it for $5 million. We turned the operation around, got it up and running, generating free cash flow, and then we sold the company for $170 million 2 years ago to a company called Calibre Mining, a larger mining company. So from a $5 million purchase, we turned around and sold that for $170 million. Prior to that, I've been involved with Dalradian Resources, which has the Kernell project in Northern Ireland that was taken private by Orion, with Continental Gold, which made a large discovery, Buritica in Colombia, and was sold to a Chinese mining company. And then probably the most famous one, Aurelian Resources, which discovered the Fruta del Norte gold deposit in Ecuador and which is now owned by Lundin Mining, or Lundin Gold rather. We sold that company for $1.2 billion originally to Kinross, and then it was subsequently sold to Lundin Gold. Charlie Roncos, who's our EVP of Exploration and a director, he was the former Vice President of Exploration for Goldcorp and Glamis. He's been involved all over the United States, Canada, and Latin America. He's fluent in Spanish and has been involved with the discovery of over 40 million ounces of gold in his career. So very, very successful geologist, and now a key part of our management team. And you can see some of our directors down there. Scott Hicks, he comes from Ross Beatty's Lumina Group. He's our chairman. Shannon McRae, former senior exploration manager at Barrick Gold, and Kalinda Parent, who brings her financial expertise to the company. The capital structure, we have about 60 million shares outstanding. We have about $12 million in cash in the bank. And you can see the shareholding on the right. Management and board are very heavily invested. We own about 12% of the company combined. Pierre Lassonde owns about 12% as well. Agnico, about 8%. And then a number of institutions and high net worth shareholders as well. So a very, very strong shareholder backing. We have no debt. We have very few options. We have very few warrants outstanding. So a very clean share structure. I'll talk a little bit about our Christina project in Mexico. Christina is in Chihuahua state. It's in northern Mexico. It's a traditional mining state. There are a number of other large mines immediately around us, including Goldcorp's El Sazal mine, Fresnillo's San Julian mine is actually the closest mine to us. It's actually one of the largest silver producing mines in the world, although it's also produces some gold. And then SSR's Pitarrilla mine to the east of us. So a very mining friendly and traditional mining area. Christina is a series of large quartz veins, and these veins are very wide. They're up to 10 meters wide in places. They run for 5.5 kilometers along surface, and there are at least 5 parallel vein zones, of which we've really only drilled one to date. There's a current resource on the property right now that was done before we acquired it. It looked at an open pit scenario, but we really think that these veins are a better fit for a higher grade underground mine situation. And that's what we're working on right now, is drilling out those higher grade areas. We're doing about a 21,000 meter drilling program that's underway, looking to define a high grade underground mineable deposit at Christina. In terms of infrastructure, there's very good infrastructure in the area. There's water. There aren't a lot of people living in the area, but we do have long-term agreements with the local ejidos, which are the local agricultural communities that own the land. And those agreements take us right through to production. So very, very solid community relation situation in Mexico. The map on the right-hand side of the screen shows the veins that we've traced to date. They show up as those red lines. As I said, those veins are up to 10 meters wide, and they extend for over 5 kilometers in length. They all have names. You can see the main vein that's been drilled to date is called the Guadalupe vein. That's the one on the bottom of the screen there. And you can see the drill holes that have been put into it to date. The little white circles show the historic drilling on it. The yellow circles are the drill results that we've released this year. And we're getting some very, very good results from that. You can see some of those positive early drill results in the text on the left. 10.65 grams per ton gold equivalent over 7.8 meters, and that's the true width of the vein, so corrected for the angle of the drill hole. 9.4 grams per ton gold equivalent over 2.2 meters. 10.48 grams per ton gold over 1.6 meters. So very high grades over very significant widths, very easily mineable underground widths. One thing to note, these are what are called polymetallic vein systems. So those gold equivalent grades are actually made up of a component of gold, a component of silver, and a component of zinc. And that's very similar to other similar kind of mines that are operating today very profitably in Mexico. We've done a little bit of work on metallurgy to look at what kind of recoveries we can get, so how much of those different metals we can get. And to date, the results look very encouraging. No issues there. But of course, we'll be doing more. One of the things I really like about this project is that all of the resources delineated to date have been delineated in that main Guadalupe vein. There's almost no drilling in some of these other veins. And so we think that there's real potential to create a multi-million ounce gold or gold equivalent deposit here with continued drilling. And as I say, we'll be drilling over the next sort of 10 to 12 months at Christina and putting out drill results quite regularly. This map, for those of you who aren't technical, is basically a vertical slice through the Guadalupe vein, that main vein, and all of those little circles you see show where the drill holes intersect that vein. And you can see some of the intercepts there, and the colors on that vein really show you where the highest grade zones are. So the purple and the red show you these high grade zones that we've been targeting with this drilling program to define an underground mineable resource there. And you can see, we've been very successful with that first round or those first 5 holes that we've drilled. You can see some of those higher grades there where they intercept, but you'll see that they're clustered in that purple zone in the middle of that section. We have other high grade zones off to the left and to the right, and we'll have drill results coming out in the next week or so from the next round of drilling on those, which I think are going to show continued success. Every one of these veins, of these 5 veins to date, has returned wide, high-grade intercepts that appear amenable to underground mining. But as I said, the bulk of the drilling to date has been on that Guadalupe vein, that main Guadalupe vein. But we think, based on some of the scattered drill holes that have been put in by previous operators on some of these other veins, once we go out and start drilling those veins as well, we think we can continue to grow this deposit, continue to add to this high-grade resource, and really build Christina up into a multi-million ounce, high-grade gold equivalent resource. So ongoing drilling over the next sort of 10 to 12 months at Christina. You'll see continued news flow from that. In Chile, this is our copper project in Chile. It's called Presentationen and Caballo Muerto. Those are the names of the 2 targets. You see that hill in the photograph there in the foreground. That's sort of surrounded by those darker hills in the background. That hill is the Caballo Muerto target. It is an altered porphyry system that sits right in the middle of one of the largest porphyry copper deposits in the world, at least one of the largest ones that is yet to be developed. So if you look at the map here, you see Chile in brown on the left and Argentina in darker color there, brown on the right. You can see the Vicuña district, where the Lundin Group has had great success with Filo del Sol and NGX and Jose Maria and a number of other porphyry clusters there. And then just to the southwest of those in Chile, you see 2 copper porphyry deposits, Relincho, which is owned by Teck, you see it in the green circle there, and El Moro, which is owned by Newmont. And Teck and Newmont have put those 2 projects together in a joint venture called Nueva Union, the New Union. And right now, that is the largest undeveloped copper project in the Americas. And I'll show you a bit about the resource on there, but there's something like 20 billion pounds of copper and 10 million ounces of gold between those 2 porphyry systems. And right in the middle of those 2 porphyry systems are our Caballo Muerto and Presentationen projects. And they sit within a 4,000 hectare concession package of exploitation and exploration tenements. They're just 55 kilometers from the city of Vallenar, very easy to get to, and at relatively low elevation. So if you were to go to the Vicuña district on the border between Argentina and Chile there, you're up above 5,000 meters in the Andes. It's a very challenging place to work. Whereas down at Caballo Muerto and Presentationen, you're closer to sort of 3,200 to 3,600 meters elevation. Still quite high, but it much, much easier to work at than up in the top of the Andes. This is the map on the right-hand side, shows the concession boundaries for the Teck Newmont joint venture around their Nueva Union project. You see El Moro on the right, 7.7 billion pounds of copper, 10 million ounces of gold in the El Moro La Fortuna porphyry. And then on the left, you have the Teck Relincho project, 12 billion pounds of copper. And the plan when they mine that is going to be that they'll begin mining on the right-hand side at the higher elevation El Moro La Fortuna deposit, and they'll take the ore down to the Relincho site by a conveyor. And that conveyor will run right through our Caballo Muerto and Presentationen projects. So there's some interesting strategic value to these projects, but we think geologically they're quite interesting as well. And you can see those orange shaded concession boundaries Those are our concessions. So right in the middle of the Tech Newmont project. We have several targets there. We have 3 porphyry copper projects or targets at Presentationen, which we call North, Central, and South. We have a very interesting project or target over at Caballo Muerto, and then another project down in the south called Los Naranjos. If you look at the, how big is that Tech Newmont joint venture going to be? They're looking at producing something like 190,000 tons of copper and 315,000 ounces of gold every year for 10 years of a 30-year mine life. So very, very large project. And as I say, we sit right in the middle of that. And why do we think it's so interesting? Well, this figure at the top of the screen here shows a satellite image, and it's been processed to show alteration that you get from the hot fluids that form these porphyry copper deposits. And so anywhere you see these bright yellow colors, you're seeing large alteration systems. And if you look down on the bottom right of that image, you see the El Morro deposit there. You see at La Fortuna, which is the primary porphyry. You see that yellow coloration there. That's the alteration from the hot fluids that formed that deposit. And then if you follow that kind of line up to the left, you see our Caballo Muerto target, another nice, well-developed alteration system there. You see the Presentationen, the 3 Presentationen targets, very strong alteration developed there. And they're along the same structure that appears to control the El Morro and La Fortuna projects. Neither of our projects, or none of our projects, have been drilled to date yet. We've only just started working on them. We've done surface mapping and surface sampling. There's copper and molybdenum and gold geochemical anomalies there. We've just completed some geophysical surveys at Presentationen North. We'll be moving on to Caballo Muerto in the fall, but shaping up to be an extremely interesting project. And then I'll just talk briefly about our third project called Yara. This is back in Mexico. It's in Sonora State. It's right adjacent to the Santana mine, which is an open pit mine operated by a Canadian company called Minera Alamos. And Yara is a copper, molybdenum, silver breccia system. It's basically a vertical pipe. It's quite high grade for a copper deposit. It's about 1.1% copper equivalent, made up of copper, silver, and molybdenum. It's relatively small at the moment. It's about 35 million tons. And it has some interesting potential both to grow. It's just one small part of a larger package there. But also we think there's potential to bring this project together and consolidate it with a couple of other projects in the immediate area to build up a kind of hub and spoke model of copper deposits in this part of Mexico. I'll just show you quickly. This map is a little bit complicated, but basically what you see there is in the photograph to the upper right, you see 3 little hills, and each one of those hills is a copper breccia pipe, and only one of those has been drilled to date. And so we know that we've got about 35 million tons at 1%, a little over 1% copper equivalent in that single pipe. As we move on and drill some of those other targets, we think we can grow this significantly, and then combined with some of the other projects in the area could produce quite an interesting fairly high grade at surface copper project, in a very supportive part of Mexico, again, very mining friendly. We will be doing a bit more drilling on this year. We'll be doing some metallurgical test work on it, and also talking to some of our neighbors about potentially merging these projects. We've already had some good discussions in that regard. So I'll just summarize. Going back, we have 3 great projects. The 2 that we're focused on primarily are Christina, our precious metals project in Chile, and in Mexico, and our Presentationen Caballo Muerto projects in Chile. Really experienced management team, great backers to grow the company, and I think really solid projects to begin working on, and very much positioned to grow. We're looking at acquiring other assets. We think we have the backing to do that, and we'll be moving forward over the next several years. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tim. Very interesting. Can I just start here with asking you about the investors here? How did you get the investors on board? Because as I understand it from your in the beginning of your presentation, it was investors coming to you with assets, and then you merged into a new co of Atacama Copper, as it were.
Yeah, I think one of the goals of doing the merger that we did that wrapped up in February was really to assemble that group of shareholders. And in the one case, I think we had some good shareholders in a private company looking for a solid management team, and so that came together very well. I think they liked what I had done in my previous companies. With the case of the company I was running, again, it was really a lot of these very successful mining investors really tend to back management teams, and so they look for management teams that have been successful in the past, that have made money for shareholders. And when you bring together, a successful management team and shareholders, I think you can, that's really what it takes to succeed. And those groups naturally gravitate towards each other.
And if we look then to the animal Atacama Copper, the different countries, different jurisdictions, and legislations, as I understand it. And Chile, for a foreign investor, has a slightly unfavorable history when it comes to tax and royalty increases. Would you agree that was the fact with Chile? And B, how would you like us in the market to view that? And then C, what's the difference between Chile or Mexico, or indeed would there be any synergies as far as legislations and authorities are concerned? 3 questions in one. Well done on me.
Yeah, no, very good questions. Look, I think pretty much every company or every country in the world right now has a history of changing regulations and changing tax structures and whatnot, and Chile's no exception. Chile is the largest copper producing country in the world, so copper in particular is a key part of Chile's economy. It's a major contributor to the government coffers. There have been some changes, and interestingly, as it often occurs in many countries, the original changes that were proposed were quite drastic and quite serious. But I think after some protests from the industry, and particularly from the unions that work in the copper mines, the government dialed back a lot of the more kind of aggressive proposals. And I think if you look at the overall environment for developing and exploring and mining copper in Chile, it's still one of the best regimes anywhere in the world, one of the best jurisdictions. You have skilled workforce. The taxes aren't out of line with other jurisdictions, and actually much lower than some jurisdictions. The permitting system is well defined with experienced regulators who know it. There's a great workforce there that knows how to mine. So I think it's despite the news, I think it's Chile still remains one of the best jurisdictions for copper mining. And then Mexico, again, there have been some legislative changes there proposed. There's an election going on in the next week or so where we'll get a new president in Mexico. The new president, the likely winner, has spoken very positively about mining, particularly in the north of Mexico, which is the traditional mining area. And so we're quite comfortable working in both of those places. They're established mining jurisdictions, and it's often quite easier to work there than it is, say, in a place where mining is new and people aren't familiar with it.
I mean, so the key takeaway here, as I see it here from your answer, is that particularly in Chile, they are very dependent on copper. So obviously they wouldn't really kill the goose with the golden egg, but obviously they would like their fair share. And when you find that equilibrium, it's okay. So that's the way to look at it.
Yeah. And fundamentally, if we find another large copper porphyry system in Chile, it's unlikely that Atacama Copper is going to be the one to mine it. The idea would be to prove it up, demonstrate that it's a large deposit, and then really, these deposits get developed by the larger companies, by the Teck, the Newmont, the BHPs of the world. So.
And could I just jump into Mexico then and the Christian vein system? You mentioned that it was easy to mine. And for a layman, what does that mean? Is it, technology easy? Is it not so expensive? When you think about mine, you think about going down deep and pretty tricky and very expensive.
Yeah. The Christina veins are really quite interesting because they come to surface. So the gold mineralization extends all the way to surface. The veins are very wide. So they're easy to see at surface, and they're very continuous. So they don't sort of you're not kind of having to hunt for these things. They just carry on across the countryside. You can see them sticking up out of the ground for about 5.5 kilometers. And even where they disappear under some younger rocks, every time we've drilled underneath those younger rocks, we find the vein exactly where we expect them to be. And because they're quite wide, and because they're almost vertical, they almost go straight down into the earth. They're very straightforward to mine as an underground mine. And these kind of underground mines are very common in Mexico. The skill set, the equipment suppliers, all of that kind of infrastructure you need to do this kind of underground mining is available in the area. As I said, one of the largest silver mines in the world is just down the road from us, which mines very, very similar veins, very similar widths, very similar grades. And it's one of Fresnillo, a large Mexican mining company. It's one of their largest mines. So yeah, they're pretty straightforward deposits.
And if we look at the Caballo Muerto, then you had a slide where you have your next steps. So resolve surface easement, ground geophysics, and finally to drill some 5,000 meters. Do you have a timeline, and could we have some estimation of cost? You were pretty happy with your balance sheet, as I understood.
Yeah, so it's Chile's an interesting situation because what we've been doing right now is we've been having discussions with an indigenous group in the area, a group called the Huasco Altinos. They control one of the ways of accessing into the properties, and they also own part of the land, the surface rights over part of the Presentationen project. Caballo Muerto sits on ground that's owned by a private Chilean family, but the Huasco Altinos, they're important partners in the area. And so we've been having a number of meetings with them over the last 6 months to talk about, how we can make an arrangement to access the surface area for eventual drilling, and how we can make sure that that their community benefits both from, infrastructure and from employment and all the rest of these things. So, we've made a commitment to them that we will not go and work on the ground where they're the owners until we have that agreement with them, and I think that they appreciate that. We've been doing work on the ground that's owned by the private landowners, which is where Caballo Muerto and Presentationen North are. We've started doing some geophysical surveys there. We did a geophysical survey over Presentationen North. We'll be moving to do geophysics in the Chilean spring. It's kind of getting into their winter there now, but in sort of September, October, we'll be back on the ground there. And then, as we go over the winter as well, it gives us time to negotiate with the indigenous groups and get an arrangement in place so that, we can go in there and start drilling, hopefully sometime in late 2024 or early 2025. But again, I don't want to give too precise a timeline because we want to respect the process and take the time to let these negotiations play out.
Okay, but it seems like it's in a very near future, and basically It's down to negotiations and finding a decent situation for both parties there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And they, as I say, it's been going very well, and we're just wanting to take the time to make sure we do everything correctly.
If you look at the company from the outside, you have 3 areas of interest, and they are in different stages. Is this a risk of spreading yourself too thin over the? There are obviously geographical difference here as well.
Yeah, I don't think so. We've really chosen to focus on Christina in Mexico and on Caballo Muerto in Chile. The work right now in Chile is fairly low impact. With the geophysics, it doesn't take a lot of supervision, and we have a couple of people in Chile who kind of monitor that. At Christina, that's where our main focus has been right now. We are looking to add additional assets. We'd look for probably a more advanced asset. We might even look at, acquiring a producing asset. I just came from running a very successful producing company. It's nice to have cash flow in the company. And I think we've got the backing to do that from our shareholders, if we find a good opportunity. So, we are looking to grow, but we always want to make sure that we're adding better projects than the ones we have now, so that we don't overly dilute our attention.
And interesting, you mentioned dilution there, because you also have a statement there that you're adding value to your owners. So how are you going to unlock value here? Would it be to issue a preliminary economic assessment. Will you sell parts or will you sell the company? What can I, as a shareholder, expect from you, apart from obviously develop the assets that you have?
Yeah, I think all of the assets require a slightly different strategy. For instance, Yara, which is our copper project in Chile, or in Mexico rather, I think that one makes sense to combine it with some of our neighbors' projects and maybe spin it out into a new Mexican copper-focused asset. In Chile, the large copper porphyry targets that we're drilling there, our goal would be to do some of the initial drilling on there, demonstrate that these have potential to be large, kind of world-class deposits in a similar manner to what Teck and Newmont have at their Nueva Union on either side of us, and then probably vend those projects. Because, when you're looking at these copper porphyry projects, they tend to have capital costs of, $3 or $4 billion US, which is beyond the scope of a small company, and better handled by some of these, these larger majors. So that's the strategy there. In Christina, I think Christina is very easily within our ability to develop and push forward. Mexico is a very low-cost country to work in. Our drilling costs are some of the lowest cost drilling I've ever seen on any project. And so that lets us drill very efficiently there. And I think we can push that one forward and even potentially push it through to development. It wouldn't be an expensive project to develop. And again, it's something that's, within our ability. And as we add other producing assets or other development stage assets, you start to get a nice blend there of, all the way through the production profile from, early exploration through to producing assets.
And when you look at, given where you are in your development, how important would the copper price and the gold price be for your, let's say, assessments and decision making? Given the fact that you're not exactly selling now.
Yeah. So, because we're not producing at the moment, it's somewhat less important. Obviously, it's more of a perception thing than it is a real impact on us. I think, the fundamentals underlying the copper price, the long-term copper price are, I think they're pretty obvious, in terms of the lack of new discoveries, the production bottlenecks, and, the increasing demand for copper. So I'm pretty confident that the copper price will support, people's view of the copper market and the rationale behind exploring these large copper projects. In terms of the gold price, obviously the gold price is a little more volatile. But again, I think, we've seen some pretty strong moves in the gold price over the recent, past sort of a year and a half. When we started producing in Nevada in 2017, I think gold was around $1,200 an ounce. So it's almost doubled since that point. And so, I think that helps, obviously. I don't think we would never build a mine that's dependent on the current gold prices. We always try to scale back and be a bit conservative and use lower price. I think we used $1,700 an ounce as our resource estimate price. So yeah, I mean, it does focus the mine, but it's not as key on our day-to-day operations.
So the gold price and the copper price doesn't keep you awake at night. That's the one conclusion one can get.
No, not right now.
No, not right now. The next news flow. What shall we look for? Is it the studies from Caballo Muerto or what's in the pipe here? Without you, breaking the law here.
The main thing in the pipeline is going to be focused on Christina. So, we're just at the start of that drilling program there. We put out the first 5 holes a few weeks ago. We'll have the next, sort of trying to release them in batches of 5 because that seems like a reasonable number. And we should have the next holes out in the next few days. And really, we'll have kind of continuous news flow over the next year or so from Christina with drill results. We'll probably start doing some more metallurgical work on Christina as well to try and refine some of the metallurgical flow sheets there. And then ultimately what we want to do is at the end of this 20,000 meter drill program, look at it, do a resource update, and then assuming that we have sufficient resource, maybe start into a preliminary economic assessment. So we're trying to be very systematic about this, but we will have continuous news flow from there. And then in Chile, Probably in the fall, we'll have the completion of the geophysical surveys we're doing down there, so we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that, and hopefully an agreement with the local community, so we can really start to move towards, talking about firmer plans for a drilling program there. And then, on top of that, we're being very active, looking at potential new assets. We're talking to a number of groups about potential acquisitions, so hopefully we'll have some news on that front as well over the next few months.
Right, so 2024 seems to be a very busy year for you here. So any further information, if one has any questions, then they should use your excellent homepage and contact on investor side, I take it?
Yeah, and I'm happy to chat with any potential investors as well. If they have any questions, the info email address goes to me, and so I'm our IR guy as well.
Excellent, Tim. Thank you very much. So it should be very interesting to follow Atacama Copper during this year. So with that, excellent. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you.
And to all you viewers, thank you very much, and looking forward to see you again. Bye.